Hi everyone, my name is Holden Stephan Roy and I'd like to spill some coffee with you as we discuss To Kill a Mockingbird. I hope that shows up properly. I read this book this month, October of 2020. It is the first time I can say as a conscious adult I have embraced this book, and I would like to say I think it's pretty garbage. I want to start this video off like that because I think there's some coffee to be spilled here. And why do I say that? I don't know if this is really a thing, but tea spilling's got its purpose, and I think the tea spilling stuff is riveting. But I do also think that To Kill a Mockingbird is a fascinating subject of discussion. So I found out while looking into this video that for the last couple of years it's actually a hot topic, and multiple school boards are considering whether or not it should be banned. So I suppose my reflexes reading this book were not entirely unfounded, that perhaps there is a lack of value in forcing children to read this as mandatory reading. And I'll get into that. But the main reason is not the subject matter for me. That wasn't it. Listen, I'm on like book 50 something this year. It takes me on average 6 to 7 days to read a thick book, like a good 300-400 pages. Okay, that's my average. It took me 10 days to get through To Kill a Mockingbird. The reason for that is because literally the first 80 pages is the worst. I mean, nothing happens. It's just boring. I mean, that's my opinion for sure. But when I posted on Facebook, it turned out a whole bunch of people agreed also that they found it to be boring. Now, part 2 is actually pretty interesting. Flawed, in my opinion, but interesting. But the fact that you have to go through approximately a third of the book being a complete snooze fest is certainly not going to turn any teenager onto reading. So if the goal of these books in high school is maybe to encourage the kids to read a little bit, this book fails and should never be shown again. Forget it. I don't care. Not enough people think this book is interesting to foster a culture of reading. So if you're forced to read some crap where the kids wonder about Boo Radley for like 80 pages and it has almost nothing to do with anything, it's just this setup for like a bar that drops, like a punchline in terms of rap terms, a bar that drops at like the end of the book. It's gosh awful. I'll be completely real with y'all. I don't know, I'm gonna keep that sip in. I wanted to be all fancy. Anyway, here's the thing. The book covers a lot of social issues. Let's go into a little bit of history. In the 50s, Miss Harper was given a bunch of money by her friends to take time off of life and write a book. Okay. She flushed out the first version, everyone liked it, and it shaped into To Kill a Mockingbird. It's an interesting concept. I believe the quote is something along the lines of, kill all the blue jays you want, but it's a sin to kill a mockingbird. To which I told my lovely lady friend Bonnie, the girl I live with, about this, and she was quite unhappy. We're currently on a campaign to try and get the blue jays to eat peanuts out of our hands. So it was quite alarming. It would be a sin to kill a blue jay, in my opinion, too. And I think therein lies like a little bit of the things. Even like the most wonderful quote of the title is inherently stupid. It's not like appreciate all animal life. It's this thing is worth more than that thing. Right off the jump. And throughout the entire book, you're left with this classist issue. And I don't know who this book is for is another issue I'm facing, right? So I don't know if this is a kid's book because it doesn't really feel like that to me. It feels more like an adult book written from a kid's perspective to try to teach adults in the 60s about a lot of issues at a very 101 kind of level. Now, I don't know a whole bunch about being alive in the 60s, but I imagine that in 1960 when this book comes out, it's actually pretty progressive, right? Like, it's actually pretty progressive. And then for some reason, in 1961, this thing wins a Pulitzer, probably because it's progressive, and in 1962, a hit feature film is made out of it, upon which many people have told me that this movie is quite lovely and delightful. So this got me wondering a little bit, right? So we have this book with some shallow, superficial fucking, my videos are going to be disjointed. We just get through it together, all right? And I'll cover all the points by the end. Full of all sorts of shallow ideas on a subject, but also from an understanding of a perspective that's probably shallow. Like a privileged young white lady writing from the perspective of like a 6 to 10-year-old girl or whatever is definitely a perspective on a lot of these issues that may have been very practical to start a lot of conversations once upon a time. But what really grinded my gears and almost led to this video is this little tagline where I'm going to show it to you there. You can kind of like read it so you know it's not like full of shit, all right? It says, "The timeless classic of growing up and the human dignity that unites us all." And that's what I call some bullshit. Here's some things you need to know. The book came out in 1960, back when a copyright law was 14 year whatever. Now it's up to 75 years. So to this day, for every book that gets sold, the publisher at Harper's estate at this point, I assume, or whoever has it, I think she had some legal issues over the rights in the late 2000s or what, I don't know, fucking recent times. But somebody is making money off of every book sale that happens for this particular book, which means to this very day, there is an active and big effort to make sure people like schools and people who believe it's a classic to buy it to complete their collection of classics. So I looked up what a classic meant for the sake of this, and it's to be the first tier or a work of excellence within its field. So is this a literary classic of its time? Absolutely. I can't dispute that. It's pretty progressive for a white lady to drop all this shit in the 60s, and it's pretty dope. And in the sense of what it's trying to do, it frames the fact that the system is corrupt, but does so in a way that almost makes it palatable for a white audience to consume it, digest it, and come to see over time that things are kind of bad. I just don't think in 2020, for the record, this is where things are at. So, like, I don't know, man. Like, the timelessness part is where I got into it, right? Because at a nuanced level, there's so many ideas that they drop in this book that are awful. They don't translate well. Here's like a specific one. So Atticus Finch at one point is like, "I think the judges should have the power to decide who gets the death penalty or not." Y'all should know what the book's about if you're watching this, right? If not, there's a case where the black person is falsely tried for raping somebody, and the jury condemns the dude to death, but it takes several hours instead of minutes, so progress. Like, I guess we're just left with the idea that if judges were to make the decisions for the death penalty, that would be the right thing in the state of Alabama. Turns out, a little bit later on, in that very same state, judges got elected on how many people they sent to the death penalty, right? In that state, later on in history, real life. Because, I read other books on the subject of the death penalty down there. And it's like Atticus'S Solution actually happened. Judges did get the power to overwrite the jury and condemn people to death. And they did it with excessiveness just to get voted back in, because you get voted into judgeship. I am like, wow, that's actually a really bad idea. Or the way they use like Boo Radley being like a good person at the end, even though he's just a social recluse and everyone was wrong about them, as a way to justify racists' behavior. That's what they're doing. The whole point is, don't judge the racist honkies. They don't know what they're doing, and at the end of it all, they're kind of good people and shit. That's the lesson. It's this whack tolerance-ness. It's like, tolerate the hatred and keep the peace, I'm just kind of projecting my opinion here, but when I read all of this, I'm like, this isn't very helpful. My girlfriend put it in a really good way. If this is the only book about racism you ever read in your life, you are left in a toxic state right now. Because, like, look, across the board, there's a lot of elitism. Like, this girl drops the M-bomb like a minute. That's fine. Actually, that's the least offensive part of this book to me. I mean, it's the 60s, whatever. But, like, I read a whole bunch of books, right, that actually were from, like, the perspective of, like, a girl who grew up in the times of Emmett Till, or a bunch of stuff like that, where it's really, like, coming from the soul of being black in that area and whatnot. So, like, you can kind of see the crisis level of the situation portrayed on one side of the fence. And then this is almost like, who picked the 1961 Pulitzer Prize Award? Who greenlit the 1962 Hollywood picture? Like, who decided that this book was going to become a classic? Maybe it was people that had an agenda off the jump or something. And I'm speculating harshly, but this reminds me of that whitewash twist on Martin Luther King's message, where it's like, people just go, "I have a dream. That's everything in a nutshell. Everyone should just be tolerant and love everyone." Like, you know, how they twist it up like that. And honestly, To Kill a Mockingbird is kind of like that. It's not like, look, according to the Kill a Mockingbird's philosophy, you know, a Charlottesville never would have happened because a little girl would have made her, you know, asked her dad a question, and it made all the racists get over being racist permanently. Just one little act of compassion is the solution to, like, it could be in some levels, but I mean, we're in 2020 now, and I think To Kill a Mockingbird had like a 60-year run to like make its point, but look, I don't know. I just felt a way about this, man. I read this book, and I don't want to really be the guy to go dissect it point for point. It's just that on top of all the whack social perspectives that really, I mean, look, let's commend it. It brings up classism, sexism, the legal system, the death penalty, racism, false rape accusations, and like incest, and like all sorts of freaking things in one book. On that front, it's extremely well composed. I think compositionally speaking, it's quite wonderful. It's just boring. That's the biggest sin this book puts together. So, like, on top of the fact that reading it is going to make a bunch of people get a twisted idea based on my understanding of some of these social issues as to, like, you know, what you should or should not do, how to perceive the understanding. Because, yo, the ethics are not great in the book. It's entry level. Like, this book, if it is to be taught in schools, should be taught as a seminal classic, not a timeless one, a seminal one. It is not timeless. It does not apply to 2020. That's why this book pissed me off. So the fact that people lie and brainwash the population to turn this shit into a classic, to sell more copies of the book under the ruse of it being amazing, is baffling to me. There's just sheer capitalism. Now check it. People are incensed. So why is this book a classic? I'll tell you why. Because nostalgia's fucking powerful. We all like it when we can all agree on shit. And for like 30 years, Atticus Finch references got made in a bunch of pop culture shit. I'm like 80% certain even The Simpsons references it at some point. So like when everybody grows up hearing about To Kill a Mockingbird and to hearing about it's a classic, and then there's the classic movie, and maybe the movie's great. I never got around to watching the movie. Maybe it's great and it trims off all the fat in the book and the core story's like next level and it's super dramatized, but like, I mean, end of the day, that doesn't actually make something better or worse. That's like saying that like Lil Yachty's the greatest rapper because like his distro's on point and everybody knows what's up with that dude. Not that everyone does, but I'm just trying to say like that's actually the argument for To Kill a Mockingbird for the most part, is it's a classic. Why is it a classic? People don't even really know. I mean, you can say it's because of the content, but if we don't really, like, how many people do you really think know the content of To Kill a Mockingbird? It's just some shit we all read, and it's just some shit that everybody knows is a classic. And it became a classic because of effective fucking marketing. And I think it became a classic because the book touches on racism enough to be considered progressive for the times, will not actually be meaningful enough to really create any kind of change. It's in that soft, wishy-washy change that, like, you know, people who say racism doesn't exist anymore. I don't see color. It's like that type of shit. It's just fucking weird to me. I don't know. Like, maybe y'all can disagree with me. I'm totally fine with that. I don't really know that I had a specific goal with it. I think I was just confused, right? I read this book and it's gosh awful to me. Like, yes, it's incredibly brave of Miss Harper to do that, but there's got to be 1,000 better books on the subject that we could be getting kids to read. So if, I guess all that to say, if our goal is to make young people read and learn about social injustice, To Kill a Mockingbird is a complete fucking fail. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents on that. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. I don't really want to ramble on. I think this was all over the place, but honestly, it's been on my chest for a minute because I spent 10 days thinking about how bad this book is, and so here I am with this video. I do hope y'all like it. thumbs up if you do, hit that like button. I don't know, really, thumbs up's Facebook, I guess. I don't know. Leave a comment. That would be real fucking cool of you. Subscribe to the channel. There's a lot of album reviews, interviews, more of these videos, music, bunch of shit. Also, redid the Patreon. So if you want to support this, link in description. Check out the Patreon. I dropped a new track recently. It's called Lose Weight. Link in description. Show some love. Live long and prosper, everyone.